Welcome to Positive Talk Daily. My name is Mr. Positive. Today on Positive Talk Daily, we are looking at the Moto G 2025 versus the Moto G 2024 edition. Now, what do these two phones have in common? We're going to go over that today. And should you really upgrade from the Moto G 2024 to the Moto G 2025? That'll be a pretty simple question. We're going to go over these two devices. What do they have in common and which one is better for your budget? Now, both these phones are pretty unique in their own way. The Moto G 2024 retails for around $39 if you walk into your local Walmart, or if you go onto a different carrier, it can be about $50. This one here you can get for free on Metro by T-Mobile or a bunch of other carriers if you either port in a phone number or if you go with the highest tier plan like $70, $75 plan. This is a pretty good phone. We're going to go over why both these phones are both good in their own ways today on Positive Talk Daily. First up, we're going to take a look at the Moto G 2024. The Moto G 2024 was released back in May of 2024. This phone is rocking a 6.6 inch IPS panel. That's 720p resolution. It's rocking a 13 megapixel front-facing selfie camera. And your pixels per inch are 255. So, not the greatest. The phone gives you a volume rocker and a built-in fingerprint scanner and the power button. The phone's also rocking a dual camera setup with a 50 megapixel lens and a 2 megapixel micro camera. Now, I took these pictures using the selfie camera, and overall you can see that the color accuracy is pretty good. And overall, it does a pretty good job in low light conditions. It also has a night mode built in as well. This is using the main 50 megapixel camera, which actually does a pretty decent job as well. And, it does use a filter, so it tries to make me look a little bit younger. If we look at the camera setup on the Moto G 2024, you do get your portrait modes, your video modes, you do get your pro modes, and what you get in pro mode is night vision, panorama, spot color, group selfies, dual capture, photo booth, time-lapse, and spot color. If we open up settings, you have rear photo resolution at standard. You'd have different settings. You can turn on auto HDR, watermark off, Google Lens. So there's all kinds of different things you can do. Now with the Moto G 2024, you're getting a 6.6 inch HD Plus display, and it's a decent display overall. Now it doesn't get the brightest, but it gets the job done. And it does have a Snapdragon Gen 4 processor. So Snapdragon Gen 4 is a 5G processor. It's basically, I think, the first gen of the Snapdragon Gen 4 processor. It's a Snapdragon chipset, basically. You're getting a decent overall setup. 4 gigabytes of RAM, 120 hertz refresh rate. So you get 120 hertz refresh rate on top of that IPS panel. So a lot of people on the YouTube will complain that the Moto G 2024 and the Moto G 2025 share the same screen, and they do. They both have the same, brightness. It's like 450 nits or something like that. Overall, it's not the brightest display, but you are getting, NFC on board. It is using 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, so you can pretty much do everything you would want to do on here. You can screen record. It's got pretty decent call quality as well. It's got a really good build quality thanks to that. It's vegan leather or a fake leather, but it does look pretty nice and gives us some grip. So you don't really need a case for the phone. It is made of mostly plastic, so you will have to deal with that. And the materials in the back are plastic, but made to look more premium. You are getting a Type-C 25-watt wired charging here. And again, it's pretty quick overall. No problems. The cameras are pretty decent for a $200 smartphone when it was first released. This phone is now retailed for under $100 on most carriers. And I think it's a really good deal. I mean, 120 hertz refresh rate, Snapdragon chipset, Snapdragon Gen 4 chipset, 5G has 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi built in. You are getting also the ability of Wi-Fi calling, depending on what carrier you're on, and you do get again 120 hertz refresh rate, like I'm repeating again, and a decent overall display. You can't complain, even if it's a 720p. Who's buying this phone, and who is this phone for? It's someone on a budget. If you're buying this phone to, try to replace, say, a Pixel device, an iPhone, it's not going to compete with those devices. But you are getting 4 gigs of onboard storage. You can RAM boost up to another 4 gigs, so that's a total of 8 gigabytes of RAM. And this one has 128 gigs of internal storage. This is running Android 14, and I believe it does get Android 15 as well. Overall, I think this phone is an easy pass. A lot of people on YouTube have kind of hated this phone because of its, IPS panel, or the phone just doesn't have the greatest specs. But it's not about specs. At the end of the day, people that are buying this phone are just looking for a cheap alternative to an iPhone or a Samsung Galaxy phone. They just want something that gets the job done. You want to be able to walk into your local Walmart, Best Buy, or Target, purchase something, and not pay full price. Now, you can get some good deals on the Moto G 2024 by going to either Metro by T-Mobile. Even Cricket Wireless has deals where you can get this phone for free by bringing in your number, or just get this phone completely free on Boost Mobile. Yeah, the phone may not have the greatest, the greatest pixel count, or have the best, video quality. It does max out at 1080p at 30 frames per second. The real question is, should you upgrade from the Moto G 2024 to the Moto G 2025? We're going to talk about that now. Is it that much of an upgrade from this one to the new Moto G 2025? Now we're looking at the Moto G 2025, which was released last month, and it's only been out maybe less than a month. And a lot of people have mixed reviews on the Moto G 2025. Is it worth an upgrade? Should you stick to the Moto G 2024? Well, the question is, you got to take a look at the phone first. This year's Moto G 2025 has upgraded a few things. This year, you're getting an additional camera, which is, a good thing to see. And they've upgraded us to a 5 megapixel ultra wide and a still the main random 50 megapixel camera. And I think this year the camera has done a better job. You're also getting that 2 megapixel micro camera, but I think they should upgrade that to 5 or just get rid of it altogether. Also, you're getting a larger display at 6.7 inches, and it still keeps that same IPS 720p resolution like a lot of YouTubers have been bitching about. But listen, to those YouTubers out there that bitch about a screen like at 720p, yeah, you could easily stick a OLED display like they do in the Samsung Galaxy A16. But if you're looking to preserve battery life, that's one thing I think this phone and the Moto G 2024 both have 5,000 milliamp hour batteries. These things kill the Moto. When it comes to the Samsung, the A16 has some of the worst battery life I've seen, especially my model. I don't hate the battery life, but some days you can get decent battery life. But this thing kills the Samsung Galaxy A16 5G in battery life all day long. I can get about 9 hours. That's like a 2-day phone right here. Okay, so overall, I think Motorola did the right thing by sticking with an IPS panel. Could they upgrade it to 1080p? Yes. The Moto G Power, one step up with the same chipset, has the capability of a 1080p resolution. I don't see why they couldn't have done that with this. But again, I understand why Motorola and Lenovo did this. They did this to preserve battery life and to cut costs as well. You are getting 30-watt fast charging on here. No wireless charging on either device. But this one does give you 30-watt charging on the bottom. Okay. You are getting stereo speakers on both, Dolby Atmos. So that's nice when you put in headphones. You also are retaining a headphone jack both on this and the Moto G 2024, no matter which one you go. So you get stereo speakers. You're getting a headphone jack. Overall, I can't complain about this phone. It's hard to. You are getting the same 16 megapixel camera on the front front of the phone. It still does record in 1080p at 30 frames per second. There are a few more options. Like you can do more with the selfie camera. It gives you more of an ultra wide feel, kinda, and you do get additional cameras. I will be doing a full review on this phone, but you're getting it's a MediaTek Dimensity 1600 chipset, 6300 chipset. I apologize. It's the Dimensity 6300 chipset. So it's decent overall. So again, it's the MediaTek Dimensity 6300 chipset. It's an overall decent chipset. It is a 5G chipset. It has been used on other Motorola devices over the last few years, but it does work pretty good. It's still pretty snappy. And overall Geekbench numbers are about average with the other phone we've been reviewing, the Moto G 2024. I think this one here sometimes has lower numbers, but we'll still have to do a full review of that. Okay. For now, this is a look at the Moto G 2025. Should you upgrade? The answer is no, because it's technically the same phone, same battery percentage. You're getting the same overall screen, just slightly bigger. You are getting the same sound. You're getting the same headphone jack. You're getting the same placement of volume rockers and fingerprint, and the cameras are pretty much the same outside of the additional 2 megapixel micro camera. For Mr. Positive Live, I'm Mr. Positive. If you have the Moto G 2024, stick to that phone.